Thank you, Bill. That was a very insightful keynote, and a lot of the things you said about security and trust do ring a bell. And today, with Klaus together, first I want to talk a little bit about security and trust, and then we'll share some of the amazing announcements of the things that we have done this year in the product and what's in store for the next year. So let me just try to get the clicker working. 1 second. It does work. Perfect. So probably everyone here in the room knows that 2023 was a pretty tough year if you worked in data privacy or security. According to the UK government, we had 114 publicly disclosed breaches just in October, with 860 million records leaked. And this brings this year's total to 5 billion, which is almost every human on the earth, which is quite worrisome. And these records are not just, numbers or something. They can be very sensitive information. For example, 23andMe, it's a genetics testing company. They do like ancestry and testing for health. They suffered a credential stuffing attack. So that's a type of attack where hackers go in and they try out different usernames and passwords to see if they can get access to, for example, Klaus's account or mine. And they were able to breach 23andMe and got records of 1 million, I hope I pronounce this right, Ashkenazi Jews, including then later, this breach has widened to almost 20 million records, which is quite worrisome because it contains ethnical information. And that's not all. So the security incidents, as Bill also said, are not going unnoticed, and regulators are fining record amounts. So for example, Meta earlier this year was fined $1.3 billion in fines for not being able to comply with EU data privacy rules. And the fine was actually so painful that Meta delayed or didn't even actually roll out the new flagship product Threads in the EU because they were so scared of getting more fines like these. And really there is a new age dawning where companies need to deal with the fact that personal data is not a luxury, it's a liability. And managing personal data is very, very risky and needs good decision making and good security practices and posture to defend against attackers and prevent things like this. That's not the only one. Bill's already said it. The US SEC, so the Security and Exchange Commission, sued the CISO of SolarWinds for basically neglect in security practices. And that is because SolarWinds had one of the, if not the biggest hack ever in the history of the internet, which is 30,000 public and private companies and entities, including federal agencies, that have been breached as part of a supply chain attack. And the supply chain attack was actually going on for more than a year, 14 months, which is unfathomable. And this has triggered many, many things. So apart from suing the CISO, making them personally liable, it also was a record fine of $26 million to shareholders. And it triggered a new executive order by the Biden administration around software bills of materials, which essentially is something where the administration tried to rein in on supply chain attacks of this scale. Lastly, even the incumbents that exist today in the digital identity space struggle quite a lot. The most recent attack, I think it was published a few weeks ago, probably if we do this talk next week, we'll have some more here on the slides, was identified by Cloudflare and 1Password. And essentially what the problem was is that hackers were able to infiltrate service accounts that have access to support cases at Okta. And these support cases, in turn, contain session tokens. So you heard a little bit about opaque and transparent session tokens in Patrick's and Alano's presentation. And basically, they were able to get access to these session tokens and then try to use them to infiltrate the systems of Cloudflare and 1Password, which, in the case of Cloudflare, was prevented by monitoring. So you might now ask, well, okay, so why is Ory, why identity equals Ory equals trust? Ory takes a fundamentally different approach to security, and this is both in software architecture, in the way we develop software, but also how we structure our company and how we do the corporate structure. Sometimes you might hear us, sorry, we can't do that, it's not secure. It's not to make your lives harder or the lives of your users really, really difficult. It's actually to protect you from the US government suing you for neglect of security practices. And there's of course more to our security approach, and that's really what makes Ory unique. So in the first sense, Ory is very transparent. We're transparent because Ory is an open source company. So we develop software in the open, and we rely on open standards to build secure software. We interact with lots of people in the community. You have Slack, you have GitHub. You can even make code changes with pull requests. And by this, our belief is that the more people view and review the software that we write, it becomes inherently more secure because issues are found earlier and hopefully not when the bad guys are onto us. We really believe that security is a first principle for Ory because whatever we do, the most important thing is that your data stays secure. We're using a ton of things. So for example, we're using machine learning and AI to identify if a request is coming from something that's likely human, likely a bot, or very much a bot. And we're using this to perform real-time monitoring to understand, what's going on. Is this a malicious request? Is it a safe request? Should it be blocked? Should it not be blocked? Furthermore, we are actively engaging with a security conference. A lot of us have been at DEF CON and B-Sites and other, hacker conventions, I would say. And we learned quite a lot of things because to understand how security vulnerabilities happen, you have to understand how hackers think and how hackers can abuse systems to get into your stack. Furthermore, of course, we're doing lots of things like working with bug bounties, red teaming, penetration testing, all of the things to hopefully find all of the issues that the software has before the bad guys do. Ory has a very long track record, and we can be very proud that there has not been a single security incident to this date, and that is almost now 5 years with Ory Corp and 9 years with the Ory Software Foundation. Lastly, Andreas will also talk about this. There's key components of secure software infrastructure, and that is also that the service needs to be available and resilient. And that's why our global Ory network is running in many regions in the world. And let's say we have a fire or there's a flood. There's many instances of that happening where a complete data center goes down. For us, that's not a problem because we partner with companies like Google. You saw this in a presentation earlier, or Cockroach. You will see that later, and Cloudflare, to provide a global system where, let's say, if one system goes down, it doesn't matter. We just fail over to another system, and your data, your identities, and everything is still available and secure. Now you know a little bit of the talking points about why Ory is a good and trusted partner for identity and access problems. But next up, I think the more interesting challenge is to hear about all of the exciting things that we have done in the product and what's going to happen next. So Klaus, please take it away.
Thanks, Aeneas. Cool, yeah. So let's talk about the product, Ory Network, and as we go into 2024, what's been happening and what the direction is. So first of all, what a year. Yes, it's been tough in cybersecurity, but it's also been a really interesting year for Ory and Ory Network as a product. The number of customers that are live is growing, the traffic is increasing every day, and the number of identities on file, just look at the chart. This is what we're dealing with when we talk about scaling. So it's been extremely exciting, and we see customers going into production, building trust relationships with customers, building secure systems on all continents, minus Antarctica, I guess. Someone needs to open a business. Yeah, we'll get there. Data center, maybe. Yeah, across industries, really, from gaming in financial services, in internal systems, where we see a wide spectrum, B2C, B2B, employee-facing. For us, it's always really amazing to see what the customers come up with, often anticipated, often not quite anticipated. But it's really a testament to the product giving the flexibility you need to build what you need. Now, let's go into a few highlights from this year and what we launched and shipped. So first of all, if you've been here last year, and I think a few of you have been, we talked a lot about going global. Our ambition was always to build a globally distributed low latency infrastructure for real-time access. So we did it. Over 2023, we rolled out additional data centers, went to new regions, and activated our smart data domiciling so that you can serve global traffic, global user bases, but pin personal information to specific regions so that you can comply with the regulation. And we've had this in production for a few months now. So over the next weeks, you'll see this rollout in self-service. We'll allow you to just pick your region and you'll see your identities pinned. And for large deployments, we activate regionality by row. So that's rolling out to everyone now and will give you the best compromise of performance and compliant data storage that you can have. Next, clicker. Here, certification. When we talk about compliance, it's not just, yay, I store my data in Europe. How do you actually know this is sufficient? So we invested a ton of time to getting certifications for how we run the company, how we run our software, how we run our platform, how we provision access to systems, which culminated in us getting ISO 27001 first and now also SOC 2. So you don't just have to take our word for us being security-minded and security-conscious, but you can actually have it on paper. And there's actually also a lot of industries where it's a requirement to work with vendors who have these certifications. So we're glad to tick that box. But honestly, it's not just a box. It's really well aligned with how we operate, how we think, and what we think is secure. But back to product. Now, one of the first big things from this year is Ory Console. We did a complete overhaul of our administration tool to make it really your companion in all things Ory Network, what you configure, how it looks like to your customers, and what the experience should look like. So just to briefly show a few screens, we went all the way in from first-time setup, your identity management, your complete management of everything around authentication, and how you present your login dialogues, your registration dialogues, everything that has like account and trust-related UI to users. And of course, all of the developer aspects around like API keys and clients and extension points and login methods. So we made it a really powerful companion for you. And all of this with a mission to make it more accessible and much easier to follow the right track and to get onto the right path to a secure system. All of this is also to make a lot more power that's coming to the identity and access management functionality of Ory Network more accessible to you. So we've been hard at work, massively expanding capabilities. One key area I want to call out is passkeys and passwordless. We've heard it a lot today. I think we'll hear more about it. Passwords are on the way out. They actually need to die. They're one of the major flaws in information security anyway. So what we did is we made passkeys a first-class citizen that doesn't get in the way and doesn't add more complexity to users, but makes login sort of fade into the background because all you see is put your finger on this thing or hold your face into the camera. We added new ways to authenticate via email OTPs. There's also one-time passwords. There's also a lot of talk about magic link login. We went a slightly different route and sent these 6-digit PIN codes to you. That's both more secure and more reliable at the same level of convenience. And passwordless can also mean like you're already logged in B2B, in enterprise environments, you're typically already signed into your work computer, into your work environment. So we made it really easy to do single sign-on in B2B applications. And all of this is available right now and today. But that's not it. We get a ton of telemetry and a ton of activity streams out of the authentication activity on Ory Network. And one of the real reasons why we went into a full redesign of Ory Console is that we also needed a place to expose all of this. So what we now show you in Console is what's actually going on. We show you in real time how many users you are signing up every day, how many users are logging in, and how that changes over time. So just go into Ory Console and you'll get these views that you usually only get if you instrument web analytics, and then they are lossy and rely on third-party cookies and have all kinds of issues. Now you sort of get ground truth right from your authentication system. You see where the customers are coming from, if they're using mobile or native. You can drill down into a single hour or look at longer time frames in your entire year of how activity unfolds. And that's just the start. We are adding a ton more around more powerful charts, more kinds of events and more details to look at, more drill downs, but also event streams so you can connect all of this data right into your customer data platform, observability stack, or training infrastructure. One more thing on the feature side, you heard Tony from Cisco earlier today. End-to-end verified identity is a topic that's going to become really relevant over the next few years. We see deepfakes are becoming really accessible. If any of you wants to generate a deepfake of us talking here today, come on, the technology is there. Just clone a few GitHub repositories and do it. Everybody can do it now. So that creates this ton of new problems of trust. Like, is the person that you're talking to really them on your messenger, on your video conference? Are they who they say they are? So we went ahead, partnered with Cisco, and implemented OpenID Connect verifiable credentials standard. It's in open source Hydra. It's on Ory Network deployed, and we'll activate it for customers in the coming weeks. The specification is still in draft, so there might be some slight changes, but it works end to end. And that puts all of you into the position to become an issuer of verifiable credentials. You can say the users that I authenticate, that are signed up with me, I can give them the certificate, they can show it around anywhere else, they can prove to WebEx users that it's really them, they can prove in other domains that it's really them. Right now, this is really a small sector of tools that have the power to do this. If you use Signal for messaging, you get these codes that you can read to each other and say, like, is this really you? I see this code. But it's really only this tip of the iceberg of high security apps. And we believe with this, we have the power to change the landscape in a much more fundamental way. And of course, literally hundreds and hundreds of fixes and changes and improvements, from API performance to convenience features, from extensibility points to quality improvements. We're shipping almost every day new features. So I encourage you, if you don't know it, changelog.ory.sh is your friend, subscribe. There's a lot coming out. So let's talk about what's next. Again, it's been an exciting year. Next year will be even more exciting. We're building on what we have created and what we have running, and are focused on making you delight your users with a better experience at a higher security level with less code. I'm not talking about dangerous no code, you don't know what you're doing. I'm talking about your life should be easy and you should have like sane code bases where you focus on what matters. So 3 areas to highlight. First of all, identity and access management. As Bill says, that's sort of the key functionality that you need first. And what we're seeing is all businesses are different. They're unique in what kind of audience they address, how they interact with users, with customers, with employees, and what that looks like. So anything you do in authentication needs to adapt to this. But also the humans themselves, they're all different, right? They're all unique, have different preferences. Some people like Face ID, some people don't trust this, some people use email. Others aren't quite as old as me and don't even have an email address, so don't use it, I guess, nowadays. So you need to cater to different preferences. And with different businesses, you also have like unique risk profiles. Sometimes it just doesn't matter, you just want users doing stuff. But in many cases, it does matter, and you need to enforce trust. But you also need to, like the simplest example is basically e-commerce. Like everybody's supposed to browse your store, but if you're looking at order histories and payments, you better know that person is them. So our theme here is we're making all of this more adaptive in the next year. We're adding more and more login methods, but we're doing it in a way that's not overwhelming users, that they can log in the way that they like most or hate least is probably more accurate when it comes to users and authentication. But we're also adding new channels to reach your customers. Like right now we added email, code delivery for login. We're extending this to new channels so you can reach them via WhatsApp and iMessage and Signal and whatnot. Or build your own apps for push notifications. But we're also expanding how we do multi-factor authentication. We're very strict and we don't intend to compromise security, but we intend to give you more flexibility or give your users more flexibility in how they combine factors and how we grade that security level that they achieve with this. And then on the business side, we're adding more capabilities around B2B identity pools so that it becomes easier to run multi-tenancy in SaaS software. And we're also adding device authorization as a native concept so that we can address a wider space of use cases at the same security level. The next big theme is intelligence and intelligent security. You've seen you got a glimpse of the telemetry that we can show you. We already use that ourselves to harden security, to detect threats, to detect attacks, to fight bots. And what we're doing is we're turning this black box of authentication into essentially a glass box. We'll give you full transparency with even more events and even more drill downs. We'll give you the event stream so that you can do what we do. You can train your own models. You can enrich it with your own signals and train more sophisticated models that detect attacks. And we'll give you the tooling, internally labeled Security Center. We'll see what the product will be called, to also act on this immediately. The Ory security model lends itself extremely well to these real-time checks and near real-time checks so that you can immediately terminate sessions and lock out bad actors as soon as you have the signals. So that's our most important investment for next year, to give you all the powers that you want to fight bots, fight fraud, fight threats, and operate your system securely. Intelligence is not just about security, it's also about understanding your users. I think for the last decade or so, the industry has been talking about 360-degree customer profiles and customer data platforms. We believe authentication is a key part of this. So conveniently, it's sort of the same data that helps us fight attacks, that also helps you better understand the journeys your customers take through your applications across all of the apps, across all of the services and touch points. So you'll also see more integrations in this space. And lastly, platform. We're building software for developers, by developers, and we know that the platform nature is of crucial importance for you to deliver on your vision for your services and your software fastest. So we're doubling down on this with new APIs, especially around event streams, but much more with expect some cool AI tools to ease migration and integration. We want to help you get rid of all of the boilerplate and boring code and focus on the interesting parts, but also new SDKs, additional extension points and integration. So we're not standing still here, expect a lot. And then in the sense of time, just to wrap up, you heard it a few times, the internet is a dark place. Another way to put this is what happens in Vegas ends up on YouTube. So our mission is really to help you be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Don't think of security as something you do in a second step later on after you've built your application. It must be built in from the start, and we give you the tools to do that. Thanks.